Spoiler alert for the Natlan ARCHON Quest Act 5. Hi, it's me, Roosevelt, and welcome to my super cozy and fun recap of the ARCHON Quest finale! I have still not emotionally recovered from the scene of Io happily cuddling the ghost of his deceased Tepetlisor grandparents, or the Avengers Endgame-style reunion of all the cast we've met in Natlan, or the hug with Paimon. And I am definitely not okay after the most badass sacrifice by a certain beloved Khaenri'ahn. Yeah, so this is kind of a recap of the ARCHON Quest finale, but it's more recounting the story of the first Fatui Harbinger, and how this Gigachad, this absolute unit, saved Natlan. Over 500 years ago, in the underground nation of Khaenri'ah, there was an honorable, handsome, super strong, basically perfect man named Thrain. His heart was modified using Khaenri'ahn technology to convert memories and souls from the ley lines into knowledge. With this, he was given the title of Sentinel Knight, sworn to protect the glory of Khaenri'ah. But then there was the Cataclysm. This was ultimately the result of the Five Sinners and the Vinster King toying with abyssal power, which is unacceptable in the eyes of the Heavenly Principles. So, the Shining Shade of Death, Ronova, cursed pure-blooded Khaenri'ahns with immortality. The people of Khaenri'ah were punished with protracted suffering, despite their innocence, as most had no idea about the Five Sinners at all. And that included the Sentinel Knight Thrain himself. The Sentinel Knight had fought valiantly to protect his homeland, but at some point was forced to flee with his unit in light of all the destruction. His squad would end up in Natlan, where they found the nation also victim to the same calamity. He would ally himself with the chief of the Masters of the Nightwind, Aizu, and fight alongside them. Eventually, with the combined efforts of the Pyro Archon, Tenoch, and the 6 tribal heroes, and everyone else, Natlan would push back the Dark Tide. So the Sentinel Knight became a legend to the people of Natlan. But he would end up going north, being recruited as the first in the Fatui Harbingers. From then on, he would be known as the Captain. But this curse of immortality would lead him on a journey of over 500 years to save his comrades of the past. So, during the Cataclysm, Capitano had used his special heart modification to become a vessel for souls. He would collect the souls of his fallen comrades, both from Khaenri'ah and Natlan, in the hope of returning them to the ley lines. These numerous souls are the strange voices Auroron had sensed from the captain early in the story, and also where Guthred came from during his possession. Anyway, so Capitano didn't have any success in other nations, but in Natlan, Capitano did see some hope with the Night Kingdom. Now, that may seem counterintuitive because the Night Kingdom doesn't accept Outlanders, and the corrosion of the Night Kingdom could bar even those from Natlan from returning. But here's where the hope resided. Long ago, the ley lines had been nearly destroyed in Natlan. The Night Kingdom had been created as a space between life and death that could serve as Natlan's ley lines. So the Night Kingdom is its own thing, you know? But there are unique laws of the Night Kingdom that essentially cut off Natlan from the ley lines of elsewhere. So, the captain had the idea that perhaps if those rules could be adjusted, the souls could be returned to the ley lines via the Night Kingdom, Outlanders included. Okay, pause. Forget changing the rules of the Night Kingdom though, because we have a bigger problem here. The Night Kingdom is in shambles, bro. The Lord of Night is hella weak. Now, Mavuika's grand plan sought to solve this. Mavuika borrowed the power of Ronova to defeat the Abyss, but as a rule, she must die. So, the final exchange in Mavuika's plan was to die to give her life force to the Lord of the Night. Slight problem though. Earlier in the story, Mavuika had argued that Capitano's plans for protecting or reconstructing the ley lines would be too short-term. But as it turns out, Mavuika's plan is also not as long-term as we originally thought. Perhaps it could buy another 2 or 3 centuries, but ultimately, the stability of the Night Kingdom is a problem for future Pyro Archons. And this brings us to the private conversation that Capitano had with the Lord of the Night. He had a proposal that not only would ensure the stability of the Night Kingdom, but would also allow for those rules to be changed. It goes like this. In place of Mavuika's life, Capitano could sacrifice his own to merge his existence with the Lord of the Night. If he did this, then Capitano would be able to master the ley lines of Natlan and change the rules. He could then allow his comrades to return to the ley lines. And here's the juicy part. Capitano has the Khaenri'ahn curse of immortality. So if he gave his life to the Lord of the Night, he could share his curse of immortality with the Lord of the Night. The curse would be a gift to the dying angel protecting Natlan's ley lines. Capitano gets the death he's yearned for, and the Night Kingdom could exist in perpetuity. Sounds like a pretty good deal, right? Except it's a contradiction which causes some problems. If Capitano dies, that breaks the curse of immortality, which Dainsleif has said many times is impossible. On the other hand, if he stays immortal, then he breaks the rule of death. But that's what makes it even juicier. Because the laws of Natlan, and by extension Teyvat, must have consistency to them. So a contradiction, or a paradox, could cause some problems. And, perhaps, can even be weaponized against the Heavenly Principles. And Capitano's second goal was to do exactly that. Ronova cursed the Khaenri'ahns with immortality. As Chlothar said, Khaenri'ah already suffered dearly from the cataclysm, but then the gods put a curse on them, denying them any chance of respite. So, imagine being unjustly punished by the gods, and then finding a way to undermine their authority by presenting them with a paradox that they created. Oh, he did that. Just to briefly recap on death and immortality. The Lord of Night explains to us that death is a rule. It's not repayment to Ronova for borrowing her powers. It's more like a cause and effect. The powers were borrowed, therefore, death just must happen. As for the curse of immortality, recall how Dane described the curse to us. The curse of immortality denies death to those afflicted with it. The body and soul will continue to be eroded until they are virtually non-existent, even if death is not the form that this erosion takes. Importantly, Dainsleif told us when a god applies a curse, it takes effect at a higher level of reality than the person themselves. He said, it is a way of branding us at the level of the fate of the world itself. He also says that trying to get rid of the curse is tantamount to burning away an integral part of yourself. So, what happens then when a person with the curse of immortality, which again takes effect at a higher level of reality, has to face the rule of death? Which one takes precedence? It has to be one or the other. This is the paradox. Because unresolved, conflicting laws would cause disruption to the natural order. To be clear though, Capitano isn't trying to disrupt the order here. I think it's about sending a message that perhaps the heavenly laws are imperfect, rules can be broken, and that the gods, you can say, are inept. Also, I imagine it felt pretty good to throw Ronova the biggest middle finger, so. As it turns out, Ronova dictates that the curse of immortality must stand. And with that, Capitano is able to merge his existence with the Lord of the Night, granting her immortality. He can now change the rules and take the souls home. No need for the Ode of Resurrection, so Outlanders can die peacefully in Natlan now, and also people from Natlan can go travel more freely. It's all cool. I do want to make an important note about what happened here, though. The line is blurry here, but I do want to say, despite the dialogue of the characters insinuating his end or that he's dead, the resolution to the paradox implies he's not dead. The curse of immortality was upheld, so the rule of death was not. So, as it stands, Capitano is still alive, albeit in a different form. Related side note, I know there's a lot of discussion about whether he'll be playable or not, with most people saying he won't, it seems. Well, here's my opinion that no one asked for. I do think this was an incredible resolution to this journey he's been on. However, I also don't think it's as done and dusted as some might think. I can totally imagine them coming up with a compelling excuse to need him again once he's done with a restful nap. Like, aside from the rule of death not being upheld, his rotten corpse body is still there on the throne, and the Tsarita is reserving his seat in the Harbingers. Okay, to be fair, even though the rule of death was not upheld, his current state may be hard to work with. But here's some crack speculation that's tickling my brain. We've gotten themes of resurrection, or rather, reconstruction through memory. Like there's a copy of Guthred's soul that was basically made of memories of him. Also, in Jalonen's story quest, that lady tried to steal other people's memories of her dead daughter to basically put them in a random child to revive her daughter, which I think is kind of similar. It's just that the lady had a vessel to work with. This is just to say that even with memories, it seems like you might be able to make a copy of someone. I don't know, just seems like an oddly specific reoccurring thing to have. So playable Capitano is totally doable. Heck, I'll even up the ante here. Playable Senora is back on the table, baby. I am so serious, guys. Listen, I know this is super half-baked and I'm just thinking out loud. Go ahead and call me crazy, but I will say, I clocked the weaponized paradox the moment Capitano mentioned his final foe, which is, yes, 100% self-glazing. But I simply bring this up as proof that I am a trustworthy authority on lore, aka a lore authority, so you can totally trust me with my predictions. Also, technically, Hoyo could just YOLO a release. They don't need a plot reason, just do it.
Just do it!
Okay, wow, I digress. Anyway, so yeah, Capitano did the coolest thing ever, and I am so here for that hater energy. I just really love that Khaenri'ahn spirit. Hey, speaking of Khaenri'ah, I had a few other things I wanted to mention. I am not yet going to touch on the Ronova, Crimson Moon, Crimson Eye imagery here at all, because that is a whole nother can of worms. But don't worry, that's a treat for later. Okay, so first. Previously, I and others had wondered if Capitano was Knight Marshal Anfortas, the leader of Schwanenritter. That doesn't seem to be the case now, but in the cutscene, we see someone giving the title of Sentinel Knight to Thrain, and I wonder if that's Anfortas. I have nothing to go on but vibes. Honestly, I'm just desperate to see him. Second, in that cutscene, that person also mentions Capitano protecting the glory of Khaenri'ah, just as the Four Pillars do. This is actually important Khaenri'ah world building because the Four Pillars were also mentioned in a note in the Girdle of Sands, and they are credited with bringing prosperity to Khaenri'ah. So speculation, but I wonder if this correlates with some names from the book Parenherry. In the book, it lists the 4 strongest people in the kingdom: Njord of the Dark Sprites, Elf of the Magistrorum Universitas, Alberic of the Knights, which, by the way, that's Anfortas, and Parenherry of the Outlander Orphanage. Now, Parenherry as a book is specious in many ways, but perhaps the 4 pillars refer to these 4 institutions. The note from the Girdle of Sands does say that their prosperity is attributed to spying on secrets from beyond the skies, which does make sense for rift hounds and alchemy, astrology, the dark power powering the ruin machines, and also the orphanage looking for shipwrecked sailors, aka aliens. Third, Capitano's modified heart is super interesting. Originally, it was meant to convert memories and souls into knowledge, and we're given like no other explanation. And I have no idea what that means. But here's my current thinking. So memories and elemental energy flow throughout the ley lines. Khaenri'ah used to produce azocyte, which is basically usable solidified blocks of elemental energy. Basically batteries. Now, azocyte production was actually more of an ancient Khaenri'ahn art, because they would end up finding dark power as a new power source. But I wonder if this modified heart was trying to do something similar, where instead of elemental energy making solid batteries, the memories are converted into a different form. Maybe some sort of abstraction, or even digitizing them? Khaenri'ah did have computers. No idea on this, but I'm still having a lot of fun thinking about it, so maybe I'll expand on this later. Fourth, and this is more of a side note and open-ended question. It's interesting to wonder how Piero has managed to maintain his, body in light of the curse of immortality. Honestly, I think we could all come up with a bunch of pretty compelling explanations. What is even more interesting and kind of infuriating is this other question. How the heck did Chlothar die? Capitano set up a paradox for the Shade of Death, and Ronova still upheld the curse of immortality over the rule of death. So, like, Chlothar, what happened?
What happened?
I mean, I feel like it either has to be some sort of abyssal power shenanigans, which operate outside the rules of Teyvat, or somehow the Loom of Fate. But I personally cannot come up with a satisfactory answer at this point, so I might have to thunk on this a little bit more. This is actually all I have for now. I'm still doing a lot of processing on things, and also it's easier to just make shorter, more focused videos. So thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave a comment with your own theories, or leave a comment talking about how much you love Capitano as well. Or even better, leave a comment about how much we hate Ronova in this house. Alrighty, take care. And have you checked your smoke detector batteries recently? Okay, bye.